So our guest today is September Morgan, and she's with Bluegrass Baby Company, or Baby Co, correct?
It's both.
Either one?
All
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's really cool how I first met September. I met her at an Access Ventures event a few weeks ago where they brought in some folks from WeFunder, and we're talking about that. And I never met September before, and we started talking about her company, and then come to find out you were a participant in Wild Season 2. So there was some pretty neat correlations there. But as she told me about her story and her passion behind what she did, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And then when I had the opportunity to host this first event, and there was some pressure to go ahead and get it done in early November, I'm like, who is someone that I could interview that would be a great storyteller and has an amazing why behind her work or their work? And I thought of September. So I reached out to Amanda and said, hey, Amanda, can you put me in contact with September? And she did. And thankfully, September was available tonight. So that's how we have wound up with our speaker tonight. So very good. So tell us a little bit about Bluegrass Baby Company and the work that you do.
Yeah, so I am the founder and owner of Bluegrass Baby Company. We started in 2017, although I've been doing the work that I do and that the business does since 2015. And I like to describe it as we help new parents go from surviving to thriving. So we do that through newborn care services, especially helping parents take care of their babies at night. We do that with sleep coaching services for older babies and toddlers, and all of it's just kind of centered around giving parents that unbiased support that's so often missing to help them be who they are within their parenting journey and to perform at work and to be a good partner to their spouse and also a good parent and also be who they are within their hobbies and their friendships and to bring that all together.
So before we get into the why behind this, you said something that's got me curious. You said unbiased support. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so we go into the homes of parents. So we're literally meeting them right where they are. But in a more figurative sense, we're not coming in and saying, well, you have to do X, Y, and Z to be a good parent. You have to put your baby to sleep in this place in this way. You have to feed them this way. You have to do all of these things or you're messing up, like the internet tells people, or they kind of get the vibe from their friends and their family that like, well, if I'm not doing it the way that they're doing it, then am I doing something wrong? And there's so much pressure in this world where there's a million messages coming at you at a time. So we just kind of come in as a person that sits down with them and says, well, what do you want? What do you want this journey to look like? What works for you and your family? Because you know that better than anyone in the world possibly could. And then how can we use our expertise in baby care and knowing different options to help you get there? So we're not setting the destination for them. We're helping them along the journey.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So what was the inspiration for you to get into this line of work and then to go on and form your own company?
Yeah, so funny thing about me, I do not have kids of my own yet. I have always loved babies. I think a lot of people can say that. I was babysat all through high school and things like that. I went to college wanting to be an OBGYN, and then I took a chemistry class and was like, no, not gonna do that. But so I bounced around between a few different majors and things like that, looking at doing social work because I wanted to help families, looked at doing nursing, kind of landed on wanting to be a nurse midwife, moved to Louisville, talked to my husband's aunt who is a nurse practitioner, and she was like, you know, you should really become a doula. That would give you a ton of experience while you're getting ready to go to nursing school to work with families. So for those of you that don't know, a doula is kind of like a birth coach. They work with families throughout their pregnancies to educate them on their choices and then are with them like physically throughout birth to kind of support them. So I jumped in on that and realized, oh wow, this is what I want to do. I just want to do this. None of the medical stuff, a lot of that comes with, I don't know, the bureaucracy of having to chart and having to like focus on some of the technical stuff instead of just being there one-on-one with the person. So I did that, and it was great. But I realized that there isn't a lot of support for what happens after you have the baby. There's a whole lot about, okay, you have to eat this way when you're pregnant, and you have to do these things, and then like your birth plan, what do you do with that? And then I was seeing parents that plan so much for this one day, this very important day, but just one day in their lives as parents, and then they come home with this baby, and they're like, okay, what do I do now? Where are all of these people that were supporting me throughout the pregnancy? Now they just want to hold the baby, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not sleeping. I don't have hands free to eat. And so I saw people in other cities doing postpartum work or newborn care work, especially in like New York City, Chicago, LA, the places you'd expect to have things like that. And it seems like this luxurious, grand thing that only celebrities are getting someone to come, like, take care of their baby at night. But I saw the real impact that was having on the mental health of parents and on their relationship with each other and how they bonded with their baby. And I was like, this doesn't have to be something that's just a big city thing. People in Louisville could benefit from this as well, and kind of blending that with, I don't know, we're like part Midwest, part South, but that comes with like that Southern hospitality of wanting to feel at home and wanting other people to feel at home. So I brought it here and wanted to make people feel at home when they bring their babies home.
Wow, that's a neat story. So you don't have kids yet, right?
No.
So with your work with kids and stuff like that, do you think if you guys choose to have kids that will frame that experience for you guys going forward with having all the other experience with all the other kids?
I definitely think so. I think probably the biggest thing is I know that I want someone to come help me.
Wow.
Like
Okay,
I've seen
sure.
the benefit. People are like, oh, you have it. I'm like, no, I don't. Like I know how to take care of a baby, but that's so different than being a parent. Yeah. And everyone needs, like, it takes a village to raise a child. Like, it's become kind of a cliche at this point, but it's so true. Yeah. And I think being that village for other parents has really made me appreciate the benefit of it and knowing that, like, okay, if we need to budget and do this to make sure this happens, and, like, I don't know, having the words to give that to our families and friends and saying, like, hey, buying us baby clothes is really nice, but what we really need is for, like, someone to bring us food or to come take the dog for a walk or to come help me out so that I can take a nap. Like, things like that. The things that we do for our clients has kind of formed my vision of what I want that time to look like for me.
Now, in working with a lot of these parents, do you find that they've got their own support structures and families and friends around them? But you also see a need for these parents that are walking through this newborn stage to be able to connect with each other as well and tell those stories.
Yeah. So on one hand, a lot of our clients are transplants. I think Louisville has like a vibrant community of people that didn't grow up here but moved here for all of the awesome things that we have. So we do get a lot of clients who are from a big city on the coast and they had friends and families that had help, and then they move here and they're like, oh, thank God that's available here too, because my parents live hundreds of miles away and grandma can't come sleep on the couch and take care of the baby. We need someone else. But we also get people who have like a huge community of support around them, but people are working later into their lives. So a lot of times you're having a baby, but your mom and dad are still working a 9-to-5 job. They can't take off to come live with you. Or they're surrounded by people who mean well, but they have their own parenting experiences, and it's really hard for them to separate that from what they're bringing to their loved one that just had a baby. So, like, it's great to have them there for a little bit. Sure. And then when you're, like, trying to navigate the choices that you want to make, to be able to go to someone impartially and say, like, hey, what are my options around this? My team, some of them have kids, but I think especially coming to me and being like, what are my options around this? And I'm not going to say, well, you know what I did was this. I'm really coming from it from a spot where, like, I've seen people do this. This is what I know from my training, and which one feels best to you.
So do you find that when people are talking to you in particular, that some folks, because you don't have kids yet, is that an issue that you don't have that first experience as being your own parent, or do you find it an advantage, or does it all just depend on the person you're talking to?
I think a lot of times people wonder how I got into it without having kids of my own. But I think I've gotten good from doing it to like twisting it, of saying like, I don't have kids and this is why that's good for you. Like I'm coming at it from a very impartial position. I haven't gotten as much pushback about it as I thought I would. You know, everyone starting something new is like anxious and nervous and thinking about all the things that are a part of you that might not qualify you for this position. So like starting out, I was very anxious about that. But over time, it's become so easy for me to describe the way that benefits our clients.
So let's talk about pushback for a moment.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest challenge you faced so far in spinning up your company?
Gosh. Okay, there's a few. I think the first one that comes to mind is just our clients pushing back past the resistance of getting judgment for having people come help them in their homes. So that's a huge thing where people are like, well, I don't want anyone to know that I'm having help come help me with my baby. Like, people will judge me and think that I'm like, you're getting sleep? How dare you? So that's a huge thing of me just kind of gently, one, talking to people like this about it to say like, hey, if you know someone that's having help with their baby, that they're doing that because that's what they need to be a good parent. But also saying that to parents and saying, that's okay. You're allowed to, I mean, it's such a fundamental thing. You're allowed to sleep. It's to me, it feels like saying you're allowed to eat dinner. You're still a good parent. So that's a huge thing in kind of working through that resistance that people have when they know that they want help, but they're afraid of what other people will think of it. But then on another level, like, I feel like I kind of fell into being an entrepreneur. I just kind of started doing something that I liked and then needing other people to work for me to reach more people and then thinking, how can I scale this beyond this point? So this community that I'm in, people that do what I do don't typically think of it from a business aspect. A lot of it's heart-centered, which is great, but you can do work that you love and you still need to make money from it. I still need to pay the people that work for me. But there's still sometimes some pushback from like charging money to take care of someone's baby, which sounds silly saying it out loud, but you'd be surprised how many people think that like you shouldn't make a business out of doing that.
So when somebody pushes back on that, a prospective client, how do you counter that with them?
Yeah, like the prospective client
Yes.
aspect. I do a lot of explaining how taking care of themselves is part of taking care of their children.
Okay.
And I don't know, talking to them about putting on your oxygen mask. That's what they tell you on the airplane. You have to take care of yourself to take care of other people. I don't get a lot of pushback from clients about the like charging aspect of it because they see the value in it.
Sure.
It's more people kind of outside of it, especially people are like, we never had that when I had kids. I do get a lot of people like, where was this when I had kids?
Sure.
But sometimes it's that, and then I just kind of put them in the shoes of some of my clients and say, you know, like I've had clients who we did sleep training with someone that had a baby, I think about 8 months old, and she also had a preschooler. And after we left and the baby was actually sleeping through the night without mom needing to literally be right there with him, she came in to dinner with the preschooler, and he was like, Mommy, I'm so happy I get to eat dinner with you. I can't remember the last time we got to do this. So just kind of painting that picture of like, this is caring for the whole family. And like, it's okay for parents to take care of themselves. Like, it's actually necessary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what is the biggest win you've had to date with your business?
Yeah. Well, being in the Wild Accelerator was a pretty big one. It was really cool getting plugged into the startup community in Louisville and having all of those resources and kind of having a demo day at the end of it put pressure on me to focus in on like all of these ideas I had spinning off to scale my business. It put pressure to focus on one and to build it out enough to present it to a group of people, which has been, I mean, it was 10 weeks, but it feels like I'm like 5 years ahead of my business on where I would have been otherwise.
So you said earlier that you kind of fell into the role of being an entrepreneur. You found something you loved and then you just started down the path, and here you are as an owner looking to scale and things like that. Has the journey been as difficult as you thought it would be? Has it been easier? Where is it on that continuum?
I feel like in some ways it's been easier and on some ways it's been harder.
Okay.
So I guess starting out from a perspective of just being in the business and not even really thinking, like I was like, oh yeah, I'll get an LLC just because I have to, and like I'll do this stuff. And then I realized like, wait, I own a business. That's not what I thought was gonna happen. Like I'm actually doing things for people that exchange money. I'm working for myself. So the hard part about that was figuring out, okay, what do I do now? Like how do I make sure I have the right team, a CPA and things like that behind me. Like those things that you don't think about unless you're going into it expecting to open a business, which wasn't necessarily what I did. It is easy doing something that you love, though. Like it's a lot easier showing up even when it's the menial tasks, if I can see where that gets me and where that gets my team for taking care of people, even doing like the chores, at least it's connected to something I'm passionate about, which isn't exactly the same as just showing up to a job sometimes.
Sure. Absolutely. That passion is so key.
Yeah.
And it's fun to go to work every day. Do you feel like some days you don't even go to work, you just get the opportunity to do what you love?
Yeah, seriously. Like anytime I'm like with clients and I'm teaching them and I'm like, my watch is buzzing me, telling me that time's up on like what they paid me for, I'm like, but I have so much more I want to say. And then hearing them say like, this was so helpful.
Sure.
That doesn't feel like a job. That feels like, I don't know, I've stepped into a dream somehow of.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
So you said something that when you went down the path of having the LLC and then this realization that you needed all these support mechanisms around you so you could do the thing that you love to do. How did you go about finding trusted resources that could help you along that way? So finding the right marketing team or the right accountant or legal representation. How did you do that?
A lot of it was word of mouth.
Okay.
Like a huge, and meeting other people that were in businesses and asking them like, okay, who do you go to? What do they charge? Is it okay for a startup? Like, are they used to working with startups and know that like I don't have buckets of cash to give them? But a lot of it was networking. Even before I got plugged into the Louisville community, networking online and online groups of people in similar business spaces as I was. So that it's nice working with people that know what you do so you don't have to re-explain your business model every single time. So finding people that had worked with someone that does what I do in a different city and then saying like, okay, if it's a lawyer, who do you know that has a license that can work in Kentucky? Or if it's something a little bit more general like a marketing team or a design person, they've already worked with someone who does a business like me, so they already have that idea in their head, and then it's, I don't know, you're starting from the middle instead of all the way back here.
Absolutely, and that makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
So with your time in the Wild Accelerator, I've talked to quite a few people who've gone through that and had just a wonderful experience. What is your biggest takeaway from your time in that program in connecting with the other women entrepreneurs in that group?
I would say to not think small.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of technical things I could tell you that I learned about funding and running a business and scaling a business, and that's all super important. But none of that means anything if I'm afraid of taking it to the next step. And I think meeting amazing women that are in the same phase of business life that I'm in and seeing them go for their things and having them cheer me on, like Brittany over here. I don't know, it just gives you the confidence of like seeing other people doing it and they're telling you you can do it too.
Okay.
And knowing, okay, like this is a big scary goal that I have next, but I can do it. If they can, not in like a negative way, if they can do it, I can do it. But like if they can do it, I can do it too, and knowing that they're behind me.
Sure.
And getting plugged into the startup community and knowing that there's like people that you've never met before, but because they own their own business, they know what it's like. They're behind you too, and will be willing to like introduce you to whoever they know that can help you out.
And that's one of the things that's so important to get plugged into a community, and especially a tight community, because at any given day as a journeyed entrepreneur, one day you can be up here, the next day it's like, what have I gotten myself into? And being able to go down that path with people that you have aligned with and really know to be supported one day, and then supporting other people.
Yeah.
So you mentioned thinking small. What is it that you think was causing you to think small initially? Was it just a lack of belief in what was possible, or you didn't trust yourself? What do you think was the genesis of thinking too small initially?
All of the above.
Okay. Yeah.
I think if you guys let me get a little bit philosophical for a second,
Please.
I think in general, women especially are expected to be in kind of a tight little box and to, yes, you can do this thing, but don't be too much. Don't do too much of that thing. Don't, like, yeah, I mean, especially in a space where I'm in a traditionally very feminine role of helping people care for their children and leading a team of other women helping people care for their children. There's a lot of, even if it's not explicit, but implicit, like, yes, and that's it. Like, there's no, what else are you going to do with that? And letting that get into my own head. Yeah. And like saying like, well, I don't know. I think there was a period of time where I'm just like, well, I own a small business. Like, and I mean, technically I do, but thinking that way kind of boxes you in and like, well, I just help people do this. I just do this. And I do, instead of saying like, I'm a founder of a company. So I think it's a lot of it is the messaging that you get growing up, and then you let it get into your own head and hold you back. And seeing other people do the same thing kind of reinforces it until you can see people taking these small businesses and turning them into something bigger.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that, you sharing that. And one of the things that was interesting, I did not meet Natalia Bishop until March of this year. I never even heard of that woman before. And I come from a small business background, not so much a startup background. But when I came to Story and heard so many of the challenges that women entrepreneurs face, and women of color and men of color and the LGBTQ community, I had no idea. Some of the challenges and some of the things I've even seen firsthand. It's just really surprised me. And one of the missions and visions that we have here for this Startup Grind chapter is it is a diverse group that's open to anybody and everybody. If you have a business or want a business, come here, because we're here to support each other and encourage each other no matter what. And folks that tend to be marginalized or looked down upon or not encouraged, we want to wrap our arms around to really help that. And it's so neat to hear that your experience of being around other women that have helped you and encouraged you to break out of that and go and see what was possible. So thank you for sharing that story. And it's neat to be able to have the message of someone who's been able to rise above it and is now going to go on to do amazing things, because that inspires so many. So at this juncture in the growth of your business, you mentioned fear before. We've all got fears. We've all got things. What keeps you up at night, or what scares you the most right now in this process of growing your business?
So to kind of take a step back, what I came to from working through the Wild Accelerator is that the services that my business offers directly to families would be really beneficial for companies to have in an HR benefits package to take care of their employees that are having children. So obviously, parents lose a lot of sleep. Losing sleep isn't great for performing at work. And also, especially millennials and people entering the workforce are really interested in jobs that benefit their work-life balance and that seem to care about them and to offer benefits that really show, like, we value you as a person, not just an employee. And family-friendly policies is one that's like that. So kind of stepping forward into that is terrifying. Going from talking from a B2C perspective and talking directly to the people that I'm going to be helping, and pivoting that, not pivoting because we're still doing that, but adding on talking to businesses and telling them, this is how we can help you and help your people, and this is what we can bring to the table. It's talking to people in a different way that I'm not used to. I'm confident that I can because I know it's a good idea, but it's scary. Sure. And it's scary of knowing, like, okay, what part do I grow next? Like, when do I add more people to the team? Or do I talk to this first and get that contract first and then add more people? Do I have the people waiting? How do I change my systems to make this possible? Like, all of it that goes into that it's scary, but not in a, like, I'm not frozen in fear kind of way.
So in that fear, though, is that also one of the things that may be pointing you to what may be one of your greatest opportunities as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Sometimes that's a road sign that clearly says, this is the path to go down.
Yeah.
And as entrepreneurs, we have to face that often.
Yeah, if it's not scaring you, it's not a big enough goal. Like, if you feel comfortable, you're not growing. Yeah. And that's something that I've had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Sure. And that's something that every entrepreneur has to walk through and figure that out. Because in this culture, we're taught so much comfort. Seek after those things. And especially the kids coming up today, that's what they look for, but we're not going to grow and become all we can be until we figure that out. Was there a defining moment where you kind of figured that out to be, in order to go where I want to go, I got to get comfortable being uncomfortable?
I think it was a lot of little moments, like a lot of freakouts, and like realizing if I stay frozen here and my wonderful husband pushing me and saying like, this is what you want, you have to push through the fear. You have to do it scared. Mm-hmm. And like just like seeing little moments of that happening and it all working out and being great, or it doesn't work out.
Sure.
And it's still okay.
Yeah.
Like it's still, I think taking small risks, having them work out to give me confidence, or taking small risks and have it not work out and realize that I didn't die and my business didn't fold and everything's fine and it just means I learned from it has been huge in helping me have that confidence to take another risk and know like I really want it to work out, but if it doesn't, then I'll just try something else and see how that works too.
I love that attitude. And as entrepreneurs, we have to have that mindset. We're going to try something, and if we fail, then we get back up and we go forward. And that's often something that's not always taught as well, especially to students. And it's one of the things that I think we as entrepreneurs can have an impact on future generations to come when they see that courage and that tenacity. And even if we do fail, we get back up and we keep going. And so that's so inspiring to so many. So let's talk about the future a little bit. 3 years down the road, what does that look like for you and your company?
Yeah, so I'd really like to be in a place where we're still helping families by getting to them directly, but also helping this city and cities around us on a broader sense by partnering with businesses to offer HR benefits packages that help their employees that are having kids. So having contracts with smaller startup businesses that can't afford to necessarily compete with some of the bigger tech companies that offer these huge parental leave packages that's just not really within reach for a small company, but they can do this. They can give them a few weeks of sleep. They can have someone helping them out while they are on the leave that they offer, and then at least you're getting sleep at night when you do have to go back to work. And it's not really a have to. When you work in a startup, you're like excited to go back to work, but you also have to take care of your family.
Sure.
And so offering them kind of an in-between way to do both of those things and to be who they are in both of those spaces. So 3 years from now, I'd really like to have that relationship with several businesses in Louisville, potentially in other cities like Lexington and Cincinnati that are nearby and have a similar ecosystem that we have here. And kind of doing the same thing that we do, but in a way that's accessible to even more people by having more digital products and things like that to offer.
Gotcha. So what is the biggest barrier that you're going to have to overcome in the next 3 years to get there?
Myself. It's that fear still, I think. And I think that's kind of the biggest barrier that any entrepreneur really has, is that the pathway's there. We know our businesses better than anyone else does, and we do a lot of research, even if it's not literally sitting down on a computer and looking stuff up. You know the space that you occupy and what's in it. So it's really just like getting yourself to do the little things that lead there and not getting caught up in the putting out fires and where you are now, but kind of, I mean, I think like technically speaking, probably getting more people on my team to help me put out those little fires so that I can focus more big picture and getting to that, but also staying confident in the fact that like this is a good idea and like I can do it.
Sure, absolutely. So when you're having those moments when you're unsure or you're second guessing yourself or you're doubting, who do you turn to for support and encouragement in your inner circles?
Yeah, for my husband, for sure.
Awesome.
Usually because he's just like right there and I'm like, help me please. But also my other friends that own businesses and the women from Wild as well, just because we're all kind of in the same place. It's hard to go to friends and family that don't own their own business.
Yeah.
Like they want to be supportive, but they don't. There's a lot of things that you don't understand unless you're in it.
Right.
So like, I go to them after and say, like, this is the thing that I was working through and it stressed me out, and, like, this is what I did and I'm glad we got there. Like, they get kind of the abbreviated, and now it's wrapped up and it's pretty and it's done. But the people that have been in it before, from owning their own businesses or even working with a startup, even if you're not an owner, you know what those, like, early stage growth looks like and how growing pains feel and that. So going to those people and saying, like, I just need to vent to you because I know that you'll get it. Sure. And usually I just need to, like, talk it out and have someone, like, nodding and saying, like, yep. And then I'm like, okay, I'm good now. Got it. Thanks.
Got it. So if you could, knowing what you know now, today, if you could go back to when you were first starting your business on that day, when that aha moment came, you started on the path, what would you tell yourself at that moment based on what you know today?
I would say I'm going to say it again. Don't think small. Like, think bigger than the box that you're putting yourself in. I don't regret. I got a lot of good experience working in my business and working with clients and not necessarily having the mindset of, like, okay, I'm also working on my business. I'm the CEO of this thing and I need to build out the structure to make it go further. I wish I had had that mindset a little bit earlier. Okay. I don't regret it, but I wish I'd had that a little bit earlier. And getting plugged into the startup community, I wish I had done that earlier.
Got it. So how did you initially get plugged into the startup community? Was it a search you did on, like, startupblue.com, or did somebody connect you with an existing group? How did you get plugged in?
That I actually have no idea. I was trying to think. People ask me how I found the Wild Accelerator, and I think I saw either someone post about it on Facebook or I saw an ad on Facebook. But even before that, I was going to small networking things and just before I got plugged into the community, I didn't have very many friends that own their own businesses. So it was just, like, making myself a very social person, but, like, wanting someone with me, go to networking events and just, like, meet people and talk to people on my own. And then I kind of started building up that network around me. And even if it's not, like, they're a good acquaintance, but you guys aren't best friends, you still see the things that they're posting, and when they see something that makes them think of you, they'll send it to you and say, hey, you'd be great for this, or you'd really like going to this event. So I think it was just small steps. I think I showed up at one networking thing and I had a good time. Yeah. And then I kept going and I became friends on social media with people in the startup community, and it starts to stack on top of it from there, and you just keep getting more opportunities to connect.
Sure, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I've found interesting, I'm pretty well connected in the small business community, and only recently, early this year, have been able to connect a lot with the startup community. But the startup events are fantastic. I get so much more out of them than a lot of just the general networking events out there. Have you found something similar?
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said about a room full of people who are trying to take their business to the next level. And they're passionate about it and they're living in it every day. Sure. Like, there's just a buzz that's in the room. And even if that person is doing something that has nothing to do with you, like completely different sectors, you will probably never be customers of each other's businesses. Not because you don't appreciate it, because you're just not their target market. Hearing them talk about what they do with that much passion, it just, I don't know, it makes the room come alive in a way that's hard to replicate anywhere else. I
agree. And passion is that foundation. A lot of times the founder goes in those other networking events, it's like salespeople trying to sell it to salespeople. There's nothing wrong with that. We're all in sales, right? That's what we do. But when you're in that group of people and the passion is able to come alive for what they do, it's just, there is certainly a buzz or an energy that's created there. So who is the one person who has inspired you most so far in your life? It could be a teacher, parent, person out there. Who's been the biggest inspiration?
I'm going to cheat and give you two, kind of. It's really three, but
we can go all three.
Yeah, so my grandparents started a restaurant when I was growing up. Not when I was growing up, when my mom was growing up, sorry. I grew up in that restaurant, and I don't think I appreciated it at the time, but thinking back, my grandparents were a couple of color. starting a restaurant in Columbus, Ohio. Like, I mean, it's the Midwest, but still. This was in like the 60s. It wasn't super friendly to people of color starting a business, and they thrived. And I don't know, I think that's where I get that entrepreneurial spirit from. So just their tenacity and their ability to make something of their own to give their kids a better life in a time where like everything around them was against them being able to do that. Like, I can't think of something more inspiring than that. And then secondary, my mother-in-law, my husband's mom, owns her own business as well. She works in the engineering space, so she started doing that as a woman, as one of the only women in her industry. Wow. So I think seeing people that, like, against all odds built something for themselves, and, like, these are people that are behind me, like, I can't help but keep pushing forward and to, like, draw inspiration from that.
Wow. Love those stories. That's fantastic. So are you a big fan of either podcasts or reading books, audiobooks? What's on your current list right now?
Yeah, I love all of those things. I'm like a devourer of information. Okay. So let me think. I really like, and this is kind of more specific to what I do. There's a podcast called Startup Pregnant, and it focuses on people that happen to be mothers that also own their own businesses and own startups and are in the entrepreneurial space. So, and it doesn't focus on either of those things exclusively. It looks at their parenting journey as well as their journey of owning their own business, which is really fascinating, and the way that those things kind of interweave with each other. Outside of the business space, I really like true crime podcasts. Okay. Those are really like get my brain out of my business, and it's a weird way to relax, but it works for me. Sure. And I know I'm not alone because it's so huge right now. But yeah, I really like personal finance podcasts as well, which is, it's interesting because you learn all these things about taking care of your business, and then you have to say, like, especially if you don't grow up with a lot of money, then know, like, okay, how do I manage my own stuff there too? Sure. Yeah. So yeah, that and just nerdy stuff. Like, I love This American Life and Radio Lab and stuff like that.
So you mentioned that kind of like when you want to unplug for a little bit. So about how many hours do you think you invest in your business on a weekly basis, if you had to guess?
Oh my gosh, how many hours in a week are there?
168 to be
168, and if I spend about like 6 of those a night sleeping, I help parents sleep, but I am not good at getting myself sleep. It's something I need to work on. In total, between different things, I'd say probably 60. Okay. I think. I think I'm afraid to add it up because it might be more than that.
Yeah, I gotcha. So what do you do to decompress? We've got some audio that you listen to, but what do you do in your spare time to just recharge your battery to make sure when you are investing those 60 hours, it's your very best work and you're bringing all of you to helping your clients? Yeah, so I'm a very social person, so I try to connect with friends and family. I do Orange Theory, which is really like killer. Orange Theory Fitness, the gym. But it's really good because when you're working that hard physically, you don't have time to like you don't have the energy to think about all of the other things that otherwise my brain would be like going through. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, being social and getting plugged into people. I love cooking. That's another thing that, like, if I'm making like an intricate recipe with my husband, we like to cook together. Oh, wow. Yeah. So when you're like doing something that requires you to have like all hands on deck, I have to do things to distract myself. Okay. Kind of, I can't decompress unless I'm like so caught up in thinking about something else, and then I realize I'm not thinking about my business, and then I'm like, oh, well, that felt good. Let me now like just sit down and breathe. Okay. So work-life balance. Is that a real thing, or is it all just a big blend, in your opinion? See, husband, you guys have had this conversation before? I think the best thing, and I try really hard to do this, isn't necessarily looking at it as like okay, did I spend as many hours doing this as I did doing this, but being there
in what you are doing. Like really, it's something I struggle with, but something I'm trying to get better at, of like putting away the work when it's not work time anymore. And that could be a flexible time. Like if we're both working at night on a weekend, but we're doing it next to each other, that's still life happening, but it's happening with work. But if it's a time where like you're with a group of people and you really should be there in that moment, putting the phone away, not answering that email, because no one's going to die if you don't answer that email. Yeah. And just like, instead of thinking of it on a broad scale of like, how do I make sure this has many blocks in my schedule as this does, just being where you are when you're there and being conscious about that. I think that's something that I could get better at, but it's something that everyone in this space I've met could also get better at. And something we all say like, yeah, I know I need to do that. But being committed to doing it, because I don't know, it makes things, even if you don't have as much time to dedicate to life because you're working on this project and you need to do it more, at least when you do have that moment to focus on life and to be around your loved ones, you're there and you're really fully present in it.
Sure. Yeah. Great advice there. A lot of wisdom. Final question before we go into Q&A. You get an opportunity at some time in the future to have a 30-minute conversation with a young Black woman that you have inspired that wants to go and start a business because of what you've done and how she's inspired you. What are your 3 or 4 words of encouragement or things that you're going to inspire her based on your own story to help her get her start?
So I think the one that I would share is that I've heard that I always keep in the back of my mind, I might get choked up saying it, is saying, you are your ancestors' wildest dreams. The people that came before you could not even imagine where you are now, and like hold that here and know that that's important. And no matter what you do, you've already gotten to like miles beyond where they thought you were, and you have people like cheering for you and rooting for you just because you started here. So that, and if she cries, we'll cry together. And then also say, like, lean into your instincts and trust. And first, this is something I tell clients too when like trying to get them to tease out who they want to be as parents. Get all of the noise out of your head, all of the people telling you what you should be doing and who you should be, how you should do this thing, and like focus in on like who are you, what are your instincts saying you should be doing. Spend time focusing on that, and like take advice from people that's valuable, but always kind of hold it against what is your heart saying you should be doing, and like going in that direction as long as it like aligns with where you want to be. That's hard. It's hard to like not hear a voice that's told you something and think that that's your instincts, but really taking the time to focus in on that. And then I guess the third thing would be to like get plugged in with a community, because again, just from being a founder, there are people that are in that same position as you, and they're cheering for you just because you're there, because they know what it's like, and they're gonna do the same way that I would if I knew connections that other people could benefit from. They want to do the same thing for you.
Absolutely. Wow. What great advice. These last few minutes have been spectacular.